I can hear Paul, but he's listening to me. They're clapping.
Supervisors are unhearable.
Yeah, nobody can hear them.
I can't hear. Can you hear me? Am I expected to talk? I cannot hear anything.
I don't hear him either.
I don't think they hear them either. Am I on?
I don't think anyone in the hybrid meeting, not in the room, can hear you.
All right, can you guys hear us now?
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
Wow. You know, so I guess you haven't heard all of the brilliant things we've been saying for the past 20 minutes? You missed
Nothing.
that?
No,
Not very polite.
I just hope they made it to the YouTube video portion.
Yeah, it's all right. So we were just getting to the Park Rec and Open Space report. I see Andrea just joined us.
Hello, hi, I'm here.
Hi. We went pretty quick, Andrea. So
Okay, I was gonna say, wow, I am a few minutes late, but I wasn't
yeah,
expecting.
we were pretty quick this evening.
Okay, good. All right, good. Well, I will kind of breeze through this update. Several things. At our meeting, we had Matt Thompson, a resident, join the meeting to discuss adding a bike trail at the White Clay Crescent Preserve. He kind of wanted to gauge the interest of the pro board and the township prior to really kind of trying to explore the trail itself and how it would all kind of go together. What we'd like to do is walk that spot with him to review. There's not much parking at that location, and we think that that's probably the biggest inhibitor to making that happen. But I think board member Overton was going to try and meet up with him at some point and look at the spot. Over at Banshire Preserve.
Hey, Andrea, I'm sorry. Did Matt go over like how he would put a trail to that preserve? 'Cause it's a kind of
Not
unique property,
specifically.
right? Yeah.
Not, sorry.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Andrew. So I think this would be a complicated project.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that he wanted to do is get
Is Matt's looking at interest, is it the interest being on the pro board and asking if they have an interest, or is he going to, is it an interest from us, the Board of Supervisors?
well, eventually.
I believe both.
Okay,
So he came to, I think he emailed the township, and it was kind of redirected to us. And so he attended the meeting just to discuss, I think he wants to create a bike trail that connects all the way into Newark. And so this would be part of that. And he was just gauging whether or not that was totally off limits, not something we'd be interested in, or something that, anyone would want to discuss.
Yeah, if I can go on record, I don't know where it would connect to anywhere. You have to go up one driveway. It's all landlocked on all the way around it by private property owners. White Clay Crescent, yeah. It doesn't go through, it wouldn't go through to Newark anywhere. So, and it goes between to get in there, it goes between two properties. It's a very unique preserve, right? So it brings up the topic of, we should discuss as a board, what is a preserve? What are we preserving? And, it also is a safety thing too. So last 2 meetings ago, we heard that, even in Franklin, there's bikes, dog walkers, horses on the trail, potentially all at the same time. It's a safe, it's something we should discuss as a board for safety. We don't have to talk about it now, or we can think about it and talk about it next meeting.
well, I would be interested in the pros' thoughts or our thoughts on what do we want? Do we want all our preserves to have all the same exact features as every other preserve? For example, do we want Banffshire to have the same walking trail, dog trails, horse trails, whatever, if it can afford it, if it fits into the makeup or the topography, or do we want something different from one preserve to another so that they're not all the same? I'd be kind of interested in what the pros' thoughts are on that.
So there are already trails for everything in Crossan, Franklin, and Banffshire.
Nothing in Crescent.
Nothing Crescent, nothing
Nothing
in
Goodwin.
Goodwin.
Yeah, let me put I think it's a pretty big conversation. So why don't we couch it and then think about it in the next meeting? We can talk about, maybe put an agenda item on Stacy next time, where we talk about our preserves and what we're interested in doing. And I think that would give the pro time to Andrea to kind of think about what their thoughts are as we go forward.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Sure. Over at Banffshire Preserve, board member Overton was able to locate a tree clearing machine, and he is going to rent that. He's working through the details of that. Moving on to Crossan Park. There will be still.
Real
Yes.
quick on the Banffshire, I think we had a question about what's the tree clearing machine for? Is there some trees blocking the trail, or
The trail in general? I don't know. I think that it is the tree clearing machine is just for widening and opening up the trail. I think it just needs cleared.
Which Is there a specific trail or all the trails? What's the
I
proposal?
honestly don't know. This is something that started prior to me, kind of joining, and so I don't have the details on that, but I could get that.
Yeah, maybe that's something that we can talk about at the next meeting on what the plan is. And this might be something that we just, we just don't have the details on what he's planning on doing, so we need to do that.
I think this has been on the list of things for quite some time, and so.
Yeah. I think we just need to.
It's one that just keeps kind of rolling over from one
Okay.
meeting
Yeah, we
to
just,
another.
yeah, that's fine. We just need to get reminded of what this is for.
That's fair.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay. Ask away. Over at Crossin Park, we will be adding stone around the new trees down in the lower section of the park. We do have several volunteers. Betsy, one of the neighbors, has a tractor she's going to bring down there to move the stone to that location. So it could be shoveled around the trees just to protect from the deer's rubbing. I believe this was on last month's update, but it has been suggested that we add more maps and signage, trail markers over at Crossin Park. The board, the pro board is in discussion and is in the process of developing a couple of options for you guys to look at for you are here type maps to put up at the park. We did not make much progress on this in the last month, but plan to circle back around this month now that the fall festival is over. An existing path down at the lower lot needs to be rerouted. I believe this was talked about at last month's meeting, and later in the fall, October, November, we will meet with the pro board will meet with board of supervisors to review exactly what that is and what the new trail could be. Lower handicap signs were ordered and the FSA installed them. They completed that before the fall festival, and we were very thankful. And then there are several memorial trees over at the park that are struggling. I went over and took a look at them. It looks like they're probably still alive. We did look into whether or not they could be replaced. There's a warranty on them, but they're all past that date. So we're just going to keep an eye on them. And if we need to water more this coming spring, if it's dry like spring 2023, then we'll do that.
Hey, Andrea, I
Yeah?
noticed when I was at the fall festival, I noticed one of those memorial trees is not alive. It's dead as a doornail.
So there's one near that like kind of middle lot. There's one, and I did scratch at like the bark, and it's green underneath. And so several people have told me that indicates that it likely could still come back. So
I'm willing to
I
wait
guess
till we'll wait till spring and see what
We're gonna
happens.
see.
Right? Okay.
we're gonna see.
Fair enough.
We're gonna be,
Okay.
yeah, we're gonna see. Let's see, at Goodwin, so board member Overton was over at Goodwin Preserve and noticed that there is some sort of disease on the white oak trees. It has spread to all of the white oak trees. We did bring in somebody for a free consultation. They said that basically what's going to need to happen is that we would need to treat all the white oak trees, or it will kill all of them and then it will move on to other trees. We were not overly impressed with the person that we brought in, and so I think we're working on getting a second opinion on that. That person's suggestion was that either the tree gets some sort of injection, or you dig around the base of each of the trees and then treat it that way. And so I think what we want is to, kind of avoid all the trees dying in that section, all those new trees that were planted. And I know that somebody reached out to Stroud to ask their opinion on it. And so we're going to keep a close eye on that and hopefully have a more in-depth update next month.
Andrea, there's a local guy. I don't know if he's in Franklin Township or but he's right. He's pretty close to Franklin. If not in it, he's right on the edge. And that's what he does for a living as a business. I've given his name to Jeff, but I can send it to you too.
Okay, that'd be good. Thank you. Perfect. Fall Fun Day, we talked a lot about the Fall Festival and what needed to be done to prepare for that. That event is over. It was fantastic. We all had a really good time, and I think it was successful in general. We got a lot of people interested in the pro board, kind of what we do within the community, and I think, again, a really fantastic event. New business, we had an Eagle Scout reach out to us who wants to do a project somewhere in the park. He didn't have any ideas. We did kind of brainstorm several ideas. One would be, there is a bridge over in Banshire Preserve that needs some work done on it. And then if that lower path in Crossan Park, if it gets rerouted, there's possible need for a bridge down there. And so we've reached out to him and expressed kind of a need for those things, and are hopeful that he'll get back to us and maybe might be interested in that. It was also suggested while we were talking about that maybe we put a list together of possible Eagle Scout projects, and maybe either have a meeting to discuss it with local Boy Scouts, or create some sort of document. So if they had questions about possible ideas within our township, we could share that with them very easily. We have still been in touch with Eagle Scout or Boy Scout Liam Kelly. He is developing some trail signage for Crossan Park. No update on that. Last time I spoke with him, he was kind of working through some of the details. Additional topics. We did kind of briefly discuss hunting season preparation. I think bow hunting started the same day as the fall festival, and so we asked if all of the placards going into the preserves had been updated, website updated, and so forth. Donna looked into that for us, and she said everything was updated. And so I think our big question maybe was the website. Several of us had a hard time connecting links on the website. And so I guess the FSA was unable to recreate that issue. I am still having that issue. I've asked a couple other people to look. And so I think, we want to make sure that that information is out there so that people can see where hunting could be occurring. Again, just something kind of we touched on prior to the fall festival. At the same time, we suggested that maybe a QR code could be a nice thing to have on those signs as people enter into hunting zones, so that they could see what they could click from their phone and see what the actual hunting area was, or if somebody was hunting there on that specific day, and just ideas we passed along, and Donna passed that along for us to the FSA. And I think that's about it. Yeah.
Thank you, Andrea.
Sure.
Okay, it looks like the Planning Commission has no report.
So I'll introduce Paul Agassi for the Historic Commission report. Sorry. Can you hear us, Paul?
The Historical Commission actually did not meet during September, but we do have an update concerning what was the planned September talk on Cape May History by the Sea. That has been postponed to November 9th at 7 p.m. at the New London Township building, and Ed Tokarski will be the speaker. So if somebody is interested and still wants to come, that will be on November 9th. The HARB did meet in September, and the single item on its agenda was proposed work for 1733 New London Road. This work that the applicant was proposing largely involved replacing various elements of the house's exterior, such as shingles, windows, siding, and the like, with newer or updated versions of what's already there. In a few instances, such as the porch decking, and the porch columns, the existing non-original wood will be replaced with composite decking or vinyl columns. And additionally, vinyl trim will cover the existing window wood trim, and a railing will be added to the front porch. After review and discussion, and I'd like to say that we received a very detailed and extensive application, which made that all very easy. The HARB recommended that the proposed work was appropriate and that a certificate of appropriateness should be granted by the supervisors. And I believe that that issue is on your agenda tonight. I would also like to note that Mark Gordon, the Township zoning officer who serves ex officio on the HARB, was unable to attend, but indicated that he agreed with the recommendation of the HARB in an email he sent prior to the meeting. So what I'd like to ask at this point is, do the supervisors have any questions concerning the application?
Yeah, so I don't have any questions on the specific application. I mean, I think looking at the pictures and of the property as it stands and then the proposed upgrades, it's certainly something that's necessary. But I do have a general question about how you deem appropriateness. So can you give me an example of something that would say preclude us from okaying this plan, right? So, you know, there's a color change, there's a materials change, but substantially the structure of the house is remaining the same. But what would say give you pause and say, hey, I recommend you not approve this certificate of appropriateness?
Okay, so first let me just point out things about this application that don't raise issues. For example, color, actually, the color of the house exterior is not something that is subject to approval by the Board of Supervisors. In this case, what's existing non-wood siding is being replaced by other forms of non-wood siding. So there's no loss of a historic feature involved. Had there been a very interesting, especially unusual, for example, non-wood siding, or had there been historic windows, these would be issues where questions might arise. However, as we've noted when this happened with a similar house, that many of the houses in the village that are not class 1 houses in and of themselves already have modern vinyl windows. By not a class 1 house, I mean a house that on its own would be eligible for the National Register. All the houses in the historic district are eligible for the National Register by virtue of being contributing resources to the district. But many houses, including my own, would not be eligible for the National Register if they were not in the district. So an example in the past of where a non-demolition situation has led to a HARB recommendation or the HARB recommending that it was not appropriate to the district was where a proposed roof was suggested that was radically different from anything in the village. It was a type of roof that was not on any existing house in the village. We would have been happy with replacing asphalt shingles with asphalt shingles, for example. That would have been and ultimately was the situation in that case. But instead, it was a sort of vinyl roofing that kind of resembled tiles that you might see on a structure in California, except they weren't clay and they didn't have that sort of definition. I realize that that's, sort of vague, but in many cases, property owners aren't really suggesting something that is particularly unusual or not already existing in the village.
Okay. Great, thank you.
We did suggest a change, for example, when an existing small garage was we were presented with several options, and one of the options was to make the small garage so large it dominated the house. And so we recommended that the option under that the appropriate choice would be a smaller size garage. That's another thing. These examples are very rare, to be honest.
Okay. Well, thank you. So Jim, do you want to read the motion? Thank you.
Okay. So I make a motion that the Board of Supervisors grant a certificate of appropriateness for the proposed work on 1733 New London Road as recommended by the Historic Architectural Review Board at their September 5th, 2023 meeting. Do I have a second?
I'll second. Oh, yeah, don't do it. Don't do it. I'll second.
Okay, Dawn. Okay. Okay, any discussion further? Anybody? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries 5-0.
Okay.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
I'm sure the others will be happy to hear this.
Is there something we have to sign, I think, at the end of the meeting for this, or?
I don't know.
Okay.
Yes, never.
Okay, like to get the Franklin Sportsman's Association report, and I'd like to introduce Mark Zanata.
Sure.
So this is our monthly report for September. And our membership, we have 35 registered members, so we are full. We had a turnover of 4 people this year. All 4 positions were filled with township residents, so that was good. We're currently at 25 members that are township residents. Our waiting list has 2 township residents and 15 non-residents. So all the new members will take proficiency tests before they can hunt, and they also have to do a service project before they can hunt. So some have already taken it, some haven't, but we'll make sure they all do before they hunt. Archery season is open. It opens September 16th. It closes November 24th. It opens again the day after Christmas, December 26th, and closes January 27th. There are 2 Sundays where it's open, November 12th and the 19th. Firearm season opens November 25th and closes December 9th. It opens again December 26th and closes January 27th. And there's 1 Sunday, November 26th. So the parcels, Banffshire, Franklin, Goodwin, White Clay Crescent. The trailhead signs are updated with the maps and the current hunting season dates. The safety setback boundaries have been remarked as needed. The signs along Franklin and Crossan were installed September 14th. And the sign install is complete for the season. The harvest report, no deer have been harvested yet, but there has been some hunting activity. The community service, as of July 23rd through September, some of our projects have been Crossan Park, Fall Festival support, also painting of the tot lot and the swings. And there's a service project Sunday to complete that. That should be completed on Sunday. Trail cleanup, there was some branches in Banffshire, Ford Farm trail mowing, and Banffshire parking lot, mowing around the parking lot area, mowing and weed cutting. This has 98.5 hours. We'll be updating that, but we're off to a good start. Last year we had 311 hours for the whole year, so we're off to a good start.
I just want to give a big shout out because we have our last story time on Friday, this Friday. We hope it's not raining, but I wish you guys could be there and see these children playing pre-story time and post-story time on the pretty new painted equipment. And I also want to say that there's a little thing that's not on here, and I want to thank my buddy Bob for trimming off the low-hanging branches on all the perimeter trees in the park, which I didn't know who did it, and it turned out it was my buddy Bob. So that's not on here. So I
Bob
want to
does a ton.
I
Yeah.
give another shout out to Bob for that because that helped us with the park on the Fall Festival Day.
He does a great job. And I do see those kids. I have 3 grandkids. They love that. They call it the Mama Duck Park because of the little duck. And I'll be probably taking one of them there tomorrow. So I'm there all the time.
Don't, could I add to that?
Okay.
Yeah, could I add to that? Because at the end, when the fall festival was over 5 o'clock, I think a large number of FSA people were there helping out, cleaning up and setting things up. You mentioned the tot lot, but also getting the sign up there. I mean, so there was a big thank you to your group, all the people that helped out on FSA on the fall festival. That was very
No
nice.
problem. Yeah.
I have one more shout out, and this is another Bob one. I love his color concepts because it's something I hated that equipment. I wanted to get it replaced.
Yeah.
And just the paint and the colors, it looks brand new. It's just
I told
amazing.
my grandkids we painted a John Deere green because that's the oldest one's favorite color. He loves John Deere. I said, it's John Deere green. And he,
Like the blue too. So
Yeah,
it just
the
looks,
blue
it looks great.
and the yellow. That's good.
It's great.
Any other questions?
Thanks, Mark.
It's like our feed bros. Hey folks, can you folks online, can you still hear us okay?
Yeah, you're back.
All right, looks like our image is frozen here. Okay, as long as you can hear us, that's okay.
Mark is still up at the mic there.
That's right. All right, so we're gonna move on to the next topic. This is our Arrow consultants, so they're not with us. We're crashing.
Maybe we still have audio.
Yeah, we might still have audio, but it looks like the computer's crashing. All right.
It's really done now.
Oh yeah, can you
Restart.
Yeah. So she had to shut everything down and then restart your
Pay the internet.
restart your Zoom meeting.
Pay the internet bill. Verizon. I mean Comcast, yeah.
So I can you know what I can do? I can do it this way. No, I can't. All right, so Bob, can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can.
All right, because we yeah, it looks like our feed lost it, but since y'all can still hear me, we'll continue on with the meeting. So Arrow Consultants is not here today. Can please rejoin the meeting? Yeah, if you can. Okay, let's leave it up, leave it alone. So again, Arrow Consultants is not joining us today. They are the engineering firm that helps us with our MS4 compliance. They presented us today with their asset. Yeah, let's see right here. Their MS4 annual report. It's a pretty hefty document. It's close to 500 pages. Going over permitting and control measures, you name it, it's in there. And so what they've asked us to do is simply sign off on their annual report. We don't see any issues with the report. A lot of it is just forms that are repeating themselves. But again, the point of this is it was an audit of the township to estimate what our MS4 liabilities are. And currently we're looking at something on the order of $3 million over the next 5 years to address some of these MS4 concerns. So we're going to have to think creatively on how to address that. All right, thank you. So with that, we can move on.
All right, I love this meeting is rolling. All right, so Guy, it's all you, a solicitor's report. I know you have a few things you want to discuss with us.
Thank you.
Seems fairly simple.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's a form that's been used before, so that's something that we can do.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the septic ordinance introduction, and I have it set up on my system and highlighted. So this is a new initiative that the township has undertaken, and my partner Vince Pompo, along with Mr. Corbett, have drafted a form ordinance for your consideration. I will say, after reviewing it today a little bit with Vince, and I know that Stan is in attendance virtually, and he can correct me if I'm wrong. There's nothing in this ordinance that I see that's particularly new or cutting edge. It is a very tried and true form of sewer ordinance, which contains, in my view, and I hope Stan agrees, that some of the important components, or all of the important components for this type of ordinance. It has a fairly robust definitional section. It has the connection requirements when the plant comes online, when the infrastructure is constructed. It has certain requirements that the landowners follow once they connect, and it contains authority. It contains conveyances of authority to the township to enforce any violations or penalties. One of the things I want the board to keep in mind is that there's a rental fee that's going to be established. The rental fee is not established in the ordinance. That will be established by resolution of the board. And perhaps Mr. Corbett can talk a little bit to that, because I understand that work and that sort of budget projection has at least been begun, and there's a pretty good idea of what that might be. But with respect to that, you'll have the consideration of the ordinance tonight and authorization to advertise. We'll adopt it in October, and then you'll adopt a resolution, consider and potentially adopt a resolution as to fees. There are lien, LIEN, lien powers for non-payment, and authority for the township to go in and do the work. There's a permature process and a provision that says that the laterals will be the responsibilities of the homeowner, or the property owner, excuse me. So it's all there. It's easy to understand. It's well written. Couple of things that Vince wanted me to make sure I pointed out, and I'm just going to go through my notes of our meeting today. This has sort of been vetted with Lexington Point, in the sense that I think you're going to see that occur perhaps initially. I mentioned that the budget at least has been noodled by Mr. Corbett, and now I think I'm correct by saying up until now all the expenses have been on the developer. At some point, the developer is going to hand off to the township the financial responsibilities. And what we thought made some sense, and we can certainly talk about it and the reasons therefore, is that actually before it's actually being used by the homeowners, there'll be some payment of sewer rents in order to give the township a little bit of a financial cushion. I think that makes sense. It's done, I don't want to say regularly, but that is a conventional use of that sort of timing. And then it'll be all us or all you when it's eventually turned over. So that's a high level description of the ordinance. I would recommend you consider it favorably, and I would welcome any comments Mr. Corbett might have with respect to the presentation. Not necessary, but they would be welcome.
Sure. Yes. Hi, Stan Corbett here. I don't know if y'all can see me with video freeze problems, but hopefully you can hear me all right. Yes, and yeah, thank you for that background and introduction, Guy. I think I agree with everything you said, but one point of clarification being the status of the information to set the rates at Lexington Point is still pretty much in flux. There were very preliminary efforts that were incorporated in the agreement between the developer and the township several years ago. That all needs to be updated. We need to get actual operator costs. We need to get much more accurate costs for those things. We need to get a projected build out schedule for the developer, a number of things to factor into how all that's going to work. And it's currently on the developer to pull that together. They've not yet provided that information. So I'm hesitant to speculate on what a rate might be at this point because we just don't have the solid data in hand.
Yeah, I love this stuff. So I actually have 3 comments. One, regarding the rates. So I just, based on recommendation, it looks like, I think this is a recommendation for you, Stan, that the township's going to have to manage this in terms of collecting the money from the residents when the time comes. And so all I would ask is that when you make a proposal, that you work in some money for that, because it's going to cost time for the staff, maybe even additional. I don't want to predict what we're going to do, but I look to you, Stacy. I don't know what's going to happen, but it's ours. And so I think we need to make sure that we keep that in mind and make sure that we have the proper compensation or whatever that right is to make sure that we can cover that, because it's not going to be without consequence. And just a comment on what Guy had said. And I am totally in support of the fact that once, the system will start to work, and the way the agreement goes, it stays, the developer continues to pay for it and manage it for a period of time. I think it's up to a year, but I'm not sure, whatever's in the contract. And so we will be working for the residents. And I do agree it's a good idea to start collecting the money from them at that time, just so we can put money aside for God forbid what goes wrong. So we just have a cushion in case something goes wrong. So I think that's a really good idea, but I'm 1 of 5. So we'll have, that will be a board decision, but we'll go from there. But I do have my 3rd comment. Guy, I think this is a really well-written document. It's very simple, very clear. And it has some lawyer words in it that I looked up, so I'm good with that. But on page 5, under rental fees, the 4th line, I didn't understand the sentence, and I think maybe it's just a punctuation or a word thing. It talks about what's connected to the collection system, or which is accessible to the collection system, which property is required to be connected to the collection system. I just feel like there's some words missing or some punctuation missing. I think I know what you mean, but it's not clear.
Page 5, what number?
Okay, so it's 8 rental fees. I'll wait till you get there, and this is the 4th line.
Is it Article 3 sewer rents and use?
Yes.
And then it's the first line, rental fees.
So if you just read it, when I get to the 4th line, I start getting lost. Maybe there's an or there that has to go. There's something missing.
Excuse me, I'm looking at that and I'm thinking there, if we had an and between the word system and which, it would make sense.
So can you read it? Why don't you read it? Can you read it to Stan, just the way, start from the beginning and just read it through? Maybe we can.
Sure. That would be section 8 of Article 3, which with the minor suggested edit I just suggested would read: the township shall establish by resolution of the Board of Supervisors the annual sewer rent that shall be owed by every owner and user, jointly and severally, of each property in the township which is connected to the collection system, or which is accessible to the collection system, and which property is required to be connected to the collection system, whether or not such property is actually connected to the collection system. That does seem
That makes sense now.
yeah, it does seem somewhat repetitive, but I think and I'll certainly defer to the township solicitor because this is much more his bailiwick than mine, but I believe the intent is just to make clear that if there is a property that by ordinance is required to be connected, they may also be charged rental fees even if they have not connected and are in violation. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the casting the net as wide as you can so that there's not a loophole, so to speak, for someone who has not connected. But I can accept that, Ann.
Right, that's my only comment. I was reading, I was like, this one's really easy. It's really easy compared to some of the other stuff that.
Yeah, it's also so that those other residents don't pay the share of the person that's not connected.
Right, makes total sense. I don't, Dave, I think.
Yeah, I do have one. I have one question. Oh, I might have a few questions, but the one that I'm looking at here is, we establish the rent in 2024 and it is now 2034.
Oh, it goes up every year.
So we just, is it, it goes up every year by a specific percentage, or can we reassess the whole system?
You can adopt an amendment to the resolution and an amendment to the ordinance, as easily as any ordinance.
Okay, so we can say we're gonna do this annually to take a look at the costs and okay.
Correct.
If I remember correctly, before it's turned over to the township, certain percentage of residents have to have homes there, right?
Correct. Yeah, but I don't have the agreement in front of me, but I believe it is 75% of the homes need to be occupied before it could be dedicated to the township. But there are other criteria to reach that milestone, but that's a significant one.
Yeah, there was a couple of items we discussed, like watching there's a difference between a half capacity system and a full capacity system.
Right.
That's a different load. So we need to make sure that we're as close to capacity as we can before we, give it the seal of approval. And then 2, watching it progress through seasons. So making sure that it's gone through a freeze thaw cycle before the township takes ownership, to make sure that we're not again buying a dud, because essentially that's what we're doing, right? So just to make it clear, we are taking over a sewer system, and so we have to make sure that, and this is going to be ours forever, so we want to make sure that this board has to make sure all of our T's are crossed and our I's are dotted, because the township's going to live with the decision we make.
Also, Ebert Engineering is due to submit a quarterly report, I guess, this Monday.
It's due to DEP, I guess, technically on Sunday, but I'm sure they would accept it on Monday. And actually, as just shortly before I joined this Zoom, I did get a draft from Ebert Engineering for review. So I'll follow up with them tomorrow, and I'm quite sure that'll be wrapped up into DEP in time.
So is there an anticipated date where the clock starts ticking on the 6-month background?
That is the one update that I just learned via this email from the information that was in our monthly report, which kind of stepped through the various facets of the project and where things stand. As you're alluding to, there's that 6-month monitoring period for the groundwater sampling that requires all the monitoring wells actually be in place first. The last of the required monitoring wells was drilled early in September. I was just informed today that they're scheduled to start the sampling within the next few weeks in the month of October. So that would then start our 6-month clock for having the data under our belt before DEP, per the permit, could allow for the system startup.
I was just thinking, Stan, you've been with this for a while, so it's finally happening, for better or for worse. It's finally happening, right?
It is. I mean, it's a big project, and there certainly have been some hiccups along the way, schedule wise, that is, but it's getting there. Yeah.
Hey, Stan, I had a couple, I guess one question for you and one for our solicitor. The way the system, well, actually two for you. If you had to give an estimate, all things, equal, when would you expect the township to take over responsibility? Are we talking sometime in 25 or earlier?
Probably earlier. There's there's provisions in the agreement for we were just talking about being a little bit better than 6 months out before they could start up the plant in accordance with the DEP permit. And assuming everything else is wrapped up in that time frame, and there's plenty of time for that. At that juncture, the plant would be started up. There would be a punch list. Everybody would make sure it's satisfactory for operations. There's an initial, I don't remember the exact terminology that was used in the agreement with the township, but there's an initial operating period. I think we can kind of call it a trial operating period, if you will, for 90 days before the township could deem the plant finally complete. That's ironing out any bugs, fine tuning any punch list items. So the plant would be up and running, but it would be kind of in a test phase just to iron out the bugs, and adding that 90 days at 3 months onto the 6 months. I think the earliest possibility would be about 9 months down the road, or 10 months, considering they're not going to start sampling until October.
I thought they had to do it for a year before we run the plan for a year.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up, Donna. And I think when we last met, you had you had mentioned that the question about user rates being charged by the developer prior to the township being involved in it, and in subsequent discussions with Vince Pompo and going through the nuances of the agreement, it was Vince's opinion that the township may be in a position to take over operations, not ownership, but operations, after that, after the startup and after that 90-day test period, if you will. So that would put us in mid 2024.
Yeah, we haven't voted on that, but I'm not for that. Yes.
Yeah, but I think my intention would be they run it until we're ready to take ownership, right? If something goes wrong, the last thing we want to know was it your fault? You guys were running it. So I think it's important to insist that they operate this system until they are ready for us to take ownership.
Well, I think and I'm sorry, to that point, the agreement also requires that the operator, the firm who will be in charge of running it, making sure that everything is going okay, will be contracted by the township, as of startup. So the township will have some direct control. The bills will still be paid by the developer, but it would be under a township contract. He would be a township employee. So the township's still going to have some direct involvement in how things are working out there.
Then also with the system, if there's somebody that does not pay, does the system allow that person to line the vertical, the horizontal line to be able to turn off that particular person?
I'll say this, no, you can't do that.
Okay.
There are enforcement and lien provisions contained, which are very similar to all ordinance enforcement mechanisms, except there are more robust lien. I think they call them writs of stare facias. I call them writs of sci-fi because I can't pronounce it. But there is a very well developed enforcement mechanism for these types of things.
Yeah, and can you go over that? Because whenever I hear about a homeowner, and I know personally someone that does not pay their bills, then the argument is always, well, we can put a lien on them. So what does that do? So the lien goes onto the deed of the property, and if that person ever sells a house 10 years from now, 20 years from now, they will have a bill which includes the backdated fees for the septic or for the sewer, along with possible fees, fines. Pardon me. And then, but in the meantime, the township never gets their money until. Am I being too weird?
Not at all. Not at all.
And the other thing is that those fees are potentially passed on to the new buyer. That's right. They put it into the price.
So the and you'll forgive me if I don't know with perfection what your home transfer ordinance provide as far as those things. You could certainly look at that as a way to make sure that eventually they'll be paid. But there's always a philosophical or policy decision that's made by the board as to how you're going to enforce any sort of lien, whether it be collection of municipal trash, if you have a public or a township program. Some townships, say, well, I'm going to send 3 letters before we do anything. Some townships say, I'm going to send 1 letter, and then I'm not going to wait for the property to be sold. I will execute on the lien, which is, again, a policy decision. How, I'll just use this word, how heavy-handed do you want to be? Some people, in my experience with other townships, is some people have sometimes some very legitimate reasons for falling behind, and the township rides with it, just preserves its right to those rents so that everybody's paying his or her fair share. But you can ramp it up if you have someone who you think is taking advantage of the system.
I'm sorry, what does ramping up mean? Like, when you said execute the lien, does that mean?
You sheriff the house.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so it's not just small claims court, you owe.
Well, a writ of sci-fi, that process, and I'm not an expert in it because we have a paralegal in our office. It's all she does. Is a lawsuit that the township files against a property owner who falls behind in his or her sewer rents, and you've got to get service, and they've got to have an opportunity to respond, and there are defenses and all kinds of disputes. There are costs that the township can recover for having to do that. I don't like to tell, I don't want to tell the future, but I can tell you my experience just in the past is you have what we call in the business frequent flyers, but generally that's not a major budgetary concern for a board. Just my experience.
Guy, that would be something we could always add to the ordinance, right?
Yeah, I think those enforcement mechanisms are in there, or they are statutory.
Okay.
And one of the last questions I had on this was going back to what Donna was saying earlier. Is it possible, can we legally put in a 5 to 10% cushion for miscellaneous costs or soft costs, like the staff dedicating X number of hours per quarter to do this, and or for the fact that there may be that one person who doesn't pay on time? Are we legally allowed to do that?
I don't know the answer to that specific question. What I can tell you is if you're going to impose a fee, it has to be neutral. You cannot impose a fee in excess of what it actually costs the township. I'd have to look at that a little bit more carefully. It's a good question. I don't know the answer.
Yeah, and I certainly can't speak to the legal aspect of that, but I would note, I think part of your question was, covering staff time to handle the administration of this, and in all of our townships that have public sewer systems, that's a standard component of the sewer user fees, because it's a very real cost of the township to administer the system. So I'll defer to the township solicitor about the legal authority for that, but I will say it's a very common practice.
Stan, and I think we talked about this at one of the previous meetings about estimating the cost, at a high level. I know we have to do an actual analysis, but and I'm looking for it here, but I don't have it in front of me, what the actual estimated cost was ballpark for these residents per year. I don't know if you happen to know it. I don't mean to put you on the spot. We can look at it. So honestly, there's a reason. Oh, go ahead.
I don't. I have a figure in my head, but I'm hesitant to throw it out because I'm really not sure of it. I will say it's going to be relative to a typical public sewer cost, where you've got a very large system, economies of scale to spread out operation and maintenance costs. Relative to that, it's going to be expensive. It's very difficult to run and administer a small public sewer system. So it's the Franklin's neighbors that do have larger public sewage systems, these rates are likely going to be higher and perhaps substantially so.
Yeah, I think the reason I bring it up, and I've talked about this before with this board, is that I don't think the residents who live in Lexington Point are really aware of the bill that's coming their way. They've lived there for over a decade with zero cost to their sewer, and then they're going to be probably paying in the orders of thousands of dollars a year. So I guess the comment to the board is, how do we communicate that so people aren't getting stuck? I'm sure that the folks who own Lexington Point aren't being, open about their potential costs. So
Is it just appropriate to draft a letter to?
that's what
all
I'm
the residents that
suggesting.
are there now?
Yeah, my suggestion is that we draft a letter to the board, to those residents, saying that we are considering, we can talk about this and how we want to do it. One way to do it is say the board's, running a cost estimate as as the sewer system's being installed. We'll run a cost estimate, and we're going to alert you to what your annual sewage costs are going to be, and then send them that letter when we determine what they're going to be.
And I would add one more thing to it. I think you do a letter, but I think you also provide, we bring them here. So I think you invite them to a meeting.
Yes.
Yeah.
And say, come,
Yeah.
this is what we're doing. Come to a meeting whenever we decide. We'll publicly advertise it and just talk it through, because like you said, a lot of them are going to be handled. I do want to make a comment to the whole township. And Guy, if I get this wrong, but by law, the residents that use this system are the ones that have to pay for it. So it's not something that we can spread out over the whole township.
Right.
It's very much has to be the people that use it. So both sides of it, residents who aren't using it,
Yeah.
you need to know you're not going to be hit with this.
Yeah.
But people that live in Lexington Point, it's going to be their responsibility, and the township will have to
And I think
manage it.
just one other comment is this is being imposed upon us. We don't have, we would prefer not to have this system installed, and this responsibility. This is being imposed upon the township. So
Hey, one more comment. Is it possible? I know we probably can't make the developer do it, but is this something we can request the developer tell somebody that's going to buy, like the new buyer proposed?
My understanding is that has to be done now, that they have to inform people that are buying it.
But they're.
Well,
they're
like you
not-
said, you're there for 10 years and you've never been charged anything. You could be gone, right?
Yeah, no, not the people who live there. I mean.
No, the new people coming in,
Yeah.
But are they telling them the level?
who knows?
they don't know.
Because if they're used to paying a $200 sewer bill and then they get a $1,700 one
Yeah.
every year, that's going to be that's a big
There's-
difference for people.
Yeah, there's something called the Real Estate Sellers Disclosure Law, which requires all sellers of real estate to fill out a 7 or 8 page form. And I haven't read that in a week or so, but I just finished a jury trial on that particular case. And I think that is required disclosures by the seller of real estate. And I think it applies to new homes as well.
I've signed them before, but again, we don't know what the price is, so they can't,
Yeah.
you can't really put that in there. You know?
There is, I'm sorry to interrupt. There is an estimate that was generated 3 or 4 years ago, as I mentioned, that is it's probably still a ballpark. I don't think it's accurate at this point, but if the developer were to be citing that, they would at least be giving a reasonable heads up to a property owner as to the ballpark what they might be looking at.
And again, this may be before my time, but I thought there was at least one invoice that went to the property owners. I don't see where my notes are on that, but here it is. That there may have been one bill sent out on the whole, when the holding tank was was installed or pumped or something along the lines, but I don't have any personal knowledge of that.
Yeah, I have no knowledge of that either. Although I would say it would have been, I believe, inappropriate if the developer had done that. I'm fairly confident the township did not. All of this costs are squarely the developer costs, and I'm not sure. There's been no discussion about them trying to recoup that from any residents that I'm aware of, anyway.
Can I go for the next item?
I think it's Crown Castle, yeah.
And so now you're on for one more.
So the issue here is a renewal of a Crown Castle lease, the tower lease, for lack of a better word. And it's time to renew that lease, and we've been offered the township has been offered two proposals. One is an $11,000 per month rent paid to the township with a 4% escalated per year over a 30-year lease. The second option is, I think, what they call a buyout, where we convey some easement or rights in the property itself for a lump sum cost of $2,100,000 for the current footprint and the accessory utility is necessary to run that. So the thought that Ms. Ortega and I, what one made more sense, what one could we recommend to the board? From a legal perspective, my thought was alienating your seed corn or alienating your property rights for 2.1 million when it's difficult to tell the future. Created some drafting risks, created some alienation of property risks, and then I felt that for budgeting purposes, just for fiscal integrity, a constantly generated monthly income that you could use, budget, enforce, whether the tower was used or not used, whether technology changed or didn't change, made some sense from a legal standpoint. I didn't really crunch the numbers. I think was much better at that. Stefan much better at that than I am. But that was my thought. You're looking at the future. You can just sell it, be done with it, take your 2 million and do what you want with it, or you can allow future boards to have the benefit of that income stream. So that's but both are lawful, both are doable. There's nothing that drives you to one or another other than those problems.
So I think the back of the envelope calculation would be if we took this lease to term, it would be something in the order of $4 million, something like that.
3.9, yeah.
With, again, not counting the 4% escalator. So they're really saying, hey, for half the cost of the total life of the lease term, we'll give you can have that as a lump sum. I think my perspective on this is I don't think we want to give up our land.
That's
I mean, I think that's to the point is that once we do that, it becomes very complicated to enforce what goes on there. And so I think I don't want to restate what Guy so eloquently put, but I think maintaining control of the property is probably more important, and also just understanding fiscal, having that regular payment every month. I don't know. I'll entertain other options.
Well, I think just want to make a point. We use that money, so that money's in our budget. That the money we get every month, it's not free. It's not like extra.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
It's in the budget. So it's actively being used and will continue to actively be used.
Yeah, but with that 2.1 million at 5.1%, which is a risk-free rate currently, is around 104,000. So it's not, it's not like we're losing that. We get the interest on the $2.1 million, And the 3.9, if you, I haven't done the math, my phone does, I need a better calculator, but if you do 3.9 million at 4% escalator each year, that probably comes out to $4.5 million, which is nearly double the amount we would receive. So if you do take a double amount over X number of years, I need a calculator to do this. Yeah. I think the return is about 7%, which the only reason I would not do it would be, I think what Guy and we're all are thinking is, we don't know what the technology is going to be like in 8 years. Or is it going to be these mini cell towers that we don't need the big one? And or there's going to be a big cell tower in Westchester that covers the entire area, and that's the only negative I see.
But they're still with us for 30, at least for 30 years. Yeah, they can't go anywhere. Even if the technology is obsolete. My understanding, they're in place for 30 years.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
I mean, I guess the only concern would be if they all go bankrupt and they can't pay their bills, but other than that, it's a 30-year lease, right? So, I mean,
We'll do another league.
that's right. We'll write them 3 letters and then give them 60 days. Sorry.
Sure. So
That's right. All right.
So what do we do?
In a bankruptcy, would we be considered one of the first, like, correct? Like, is there language that we put in for that? First lien, yeah.
I mean, to answer your question, what do we do now? I think you task your administration to maybe go in one direction. Or just suggest that maybe you'd like us to look a little more heavily into the lease extension.
Yeah.
And then we'll put that in order, and then you can consider that.
Can we do that a thumbs up, you think?
Yeah, that's what it's-
Yeah. So is it
Thumbs up.
It's good enough for
Thumbs up.
good enough for me. Okay.
No.
1, 2, 3,
All right.
4.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm gonna move on to one more. So we're gonna talk about Mount Olive Gate and fencing. And Dave, I think you have some pictures. You want to?
Yeah, I
You wanna take
can
this
I can
over?
open up the conversation. Let me just share my screen here. All right, am I showing up yet? There we go. All right, so earlier this year, we officially closed Mount Olivet Road, which is this stretch here. This is essentially a gravel path that connects Walker Road to Strickersville Road. And there's been an issue here at this head of the road where, and I'll show you a picture here, there's a couple of issues. One, we've had this gate here, and I don't know if you can see, okay, you can't see my, so there's this gate, it's set back pretty far off the road, and there's a couple of issues with the gate. One, it's encouraging what I would consider an overflow of parking here. This is turning into a parking lot, which is it's really not intended to be. And I'll show you an aerial view of why that's an issue. And 2, the gate was kind of a temporary solution here, and you can see on both sides, it's pretty flattened out, and people can, and not so much people, but vehicles are actually getting around this gate. So since this photo was taken, there was at least what we assume was some sort of pickup truck or four-wheel vehicle that actually drove over here and caused some erosion. John Griffiths here he's a resident who lives in this property adjacent to it. There's a couple of easement issues. Part of the property is owned by the state. There's some township easement township road easements, and then there's a small piece that's owned by John outright in this area. So I don't have a 1-to-1 map right here of what each various property lines are, but again, this is the issue. The primary issue is the gates probably insufficient. People are driving. This is a road that's been closed to motor vehicles. And right now trucks and vehicles are kind of scooting around here, causing erosion. So let's go to an aerial view. One of the major issues with this piece of property is this bend right here around this road. This is a blind corner. People drive at a very high rate of speed down here. I think I've been out there many times. Jeff's not here, but Donna, you were there, and cars kind of whip around this corner. And so some of the issues are, how do we don't want a whole bunch of traffic backing in and out of here, backing up on this road. So what are some solutions to kind of eliminate some of this and also eliminate the erosion on these banks? So it's hard to see with this image, but there's asphalt that goes down the center line. And then there's some erosion. This is a little stop sign that's there that I put as a point of reference, but the asphalt ends right about where that stop sign is, and then it begins to turn into dirt, and that's starting to erode as people kind of cut the corner. So there's a lot of problems here. I don't know if we can solve all of them, but we had a couple of proposals. The first is one is to move the proposed fence location up to about where the stop sign is. We had a conversation with the resident and with the state, and Donna was with me at that time, and we talked about moving this up. And there was a couple of issues where we didn't want to bring it right up to the road. There's a couple of reasons for that. One is we need emergency access. So we have a gate situated such that if there's emergency access and you need to get an emergency vehicle onto Walker Road to get to Strickersville, or you want to be able to at least stop the vehicle, park the vehicle, open the fence, and go. The other is ADA access. So we're not officially making an ADA access parking lot here, but we got a letter from a resident who is disabled and uses this trail because it's really good for his wheelchair, because it's gravel, so he likes to go walk his dog. And so he heard that we might be blocking the fence or doing something to prevent him from getting through there. So we want to acknowledge that we don't want to completely remove that from his access. So we want to at least give that some thought. So that's issue one, is to move the fence up, harden either side of the fence so we can't get vehicles around to help avoid the
But leave enough space for a wheelchair to get through.
Yeah, and leave enough space in wheelchair, or there's different fencing options that you can employ. So there's there's a lot of different options for fences. And then the other piece was to help kind of prevent this erosion and help kind of people slow down around these corners. Please forgive my great artwork here. I was just
one before you move on.
Yeah.
Those two, it says fence location, but it would be a fence.
I should say a gate. That should have been.
Okay,
That should
I
be
just
a
want to
gate.
make sure. That's all.
Gate.
Okay.
There we go.
Pretty good at it.
It's all I do all day long is talk about PowerPoint presentations. So there's that's one, is we want to discourage turning this thing into a parking lot. And again, there's actually two concerns around the corners here. One is the erosion, right? We want to keep there's asphalt here. We want to keep people from driving on the dirt and continuing to erode as well as kind of make this narrower, so we kind of limit the number of vehicles. So
The reason that on the right is dangerous, there's a big drop there with a stream and a culvert pipe.
right.
And if a car was to go off, it would definitely flip over.
Mm-hmm.
In regards to I'm really curious about the wheelchair, because I've been there 40 years and I've been on there every day, like 3-4 times a day. I've
Mhm.
never seen anybody in a wheelchair there. I don't know how you even roll in the gravel, but if you make the spot for, one car, then it's parking lot. I mean, it's either a parking lot or it's not.
Right. So, okay,
You know what I mean?
I do. Thank you.
That one person.
Well, so again, the goal is not to eliminate all vehicles from stopping here, right?
Or it's really that if there's an emergency and they got to open the gate.
You want to be
You
able
don't want
to stop
somebody
there.
sticking out of the road,
Mhm.
right?
Of course, there's another gate on the other end, for emergencies also. There's two gates. It's-
Okay.
That road goes straight through.
So it depends on what direction you're coming, right? So if the vehicle's coming from this direction, they'll need space, and there's vehicle coming from the other direction, they'll need space. So the thought here is, well, if we can put some fencing here, we further narrow. And I think when we had the conversation, once we narrowed this, there's probably maybe space for what, 2 vehicles at the most. So it really does 2 things. One, it stops having this pileup of 6, 7, 8 cars. It also reduces the likelihood of people using this embankment. So what's been happening, at least previously, we've seen trucks, parking up here on the embankment and kind of wrapping around the corner, which is certainly very dangerous for cars moving down the road. So these are just proposals. So the board has to decide. At least at the very least, I think we need to move this fence up, or I should say this gate, and get an appropriate gate that goes from this stop sign across the road, and to kind of prevent vehicles kind of scooting around here. What that gate looks like, we can talk about that. I think we'll probably have Jeff or whoever maybe come up with the board with some options. So that's certainly the first step. And then so Donna's been down there, I've been down there, Jeff's been down there. We've had the state looking at it as well, to kind of figure out, okay, what are the other options? And I think the last time we came down was bring the fence up, come up with some sort of fencing that prevents the traffic from kind of parking there, or reducing the amount of cars that could potentially even park there. And I think that's where we left it. I don't know, Don, if you have any comments. You were there when we kind of came up with this idea.
No, I think I don't know how the fence doesn't look right the way you drew it, but but you did a great job. But I think if you go there, I think the idea is everything you just said, is trying to make it smaller.
Yeah.
And trying to protect JR's property, so there's not people driving all over it. Yeah, I think that's what, I think if anybody can go out, we'll get you a second, go out there and look at it, they'll see. Okay, so I'm agreeing with you. I'll give it back to you.
Can we go back to, since you guys have been there, and I don't know, but where you said the culvert pipe is, why isn't there a guide rail there?
That's behind that stop sign there.
Yes.
I see about the agenda saying safe comments for the
Yeah.
tail end. I'm gonna forget some stuff. Is it possible to interject?
I'm just curious, and then you mentioned fencing on the other side. I guess that's the northern side. Why, could we use a guide rail there as well?
So I think there's some disagreement here because that wedge that you point out is also within the road easement, right? So it's not, when you talk about it's your property, we'll give it back to you. It's within the township easement of that road. And so if you, not the whole thing, right? But that's not how it's being presented. It's presented that this whole wedge is yours. And truly there's a smaller piece that is within that wedge that is truly outside of the state's property, which abuts yours and the township's easement. So from my perspective, we have, the township has options, right? We have, a couple of options. One, do nothing. We just leave it as it is, right? Two is we do something, right? And what that something is we can move the gate up. We can try and harden the corners. But I don't think the solution is going to be, we're going to give up our easement.
Well, I'm not saying that, but what the other thing is what I wondered, Jeff had it spray painted, and I think he and the other person were probably close. The easement came like 6 or 8 feet from the road edge further, and there's a little line there, but initially, I guess, not initially, but my question is, why is the whole rest of the road and everywhere else, both sides of the road, Walker Road, everything, isn't blacktopped on the easement, just this spot that was accidentally blacktop? Why is it needed to remain blacktop now versus going back to nature?
Well, because I think there's no real compelling reason to take the asphalt up. And I'm not sure it was done as an accident. Because I think it was done to facilitate the vehicles that were going up and down Walker Road, particularly the farm equipment that was used to access the properties on the Peacedale Preserve. Peace Trail, it's Strawbridge property. So I don't know if it was accidentally done. I think it was something that we.
Sorry. Let's say that's the point. Down here's the fence. Let's say the easement's like that edge. So why did they blacktop in there my property? That was an accident.
So that's within our easement. So maybe so we can. Oh yeah. So there's a 4x4 foot stretch of land that we can dig out for you, but this doesn't preclude us from trying to put a fence up and fix the problem. Right. So here's where I'm confused. We're trying to come up with a proposal, and I'm not really clear what you're asking us to do. Like, what is your counter proposal?
Well, obviously a gate there for emergency vehicles. We talked about this about 1 year and 6 months ago. What we decided was, at that time, I thought we decided that we did not want the parking to continue. We wanted the entrance, the gate for emergency vehicles. So the parking was kind of a dangerous thing going on at that time. And that's still the thing. Bring it back to the road that it was. It's just, I remember the other.
So we can't bring it back to where the road is, because we need to have a spot where the emergency vehicle can stop off the road.
Oh yeah, but like you said, they don't need like 30 feet or so. They need enough to come off, park in front of the gate, and then go in.
That's what we have.
That's what we're proposing.
Well, the stop sign's more that down at the south end of Mount Olivet at Jim Nolan's place, there's no parking allowed. There's no parking. There's the entrance gate there that is easily accessed. They can pull an ambulance or whatever in. It just, there's not room for like 4 or 5 or 6 cars, and no one ever parks there because there's not a lot of parking.
So you're proposing you're going to make it room for 2 cars, but you're not going to tear up the blacktop. You're just going to drive up there. That's what you want to do. Is that what you're saying?
Right. We're going to put in the fence.
Put a fence, 2 cars can park in front of it, the emergency vehicles, do the gate out, and leave enough room for 2 cars.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
And the fence is negotiable, right? It's structure. We don't know what kind.
Yeah, we don't know what the fence is. Yeah.
We had a conversation. If you would agreed with it, we would say, you tell us what you want, because it's right on your it's close to your property, so you should be comfortable with it, right? We would very much want to hear what you had to say in terms of what you like. So if there's a lot of ifs here, if the fence was where we want, we would very much be open to your suggestions in terms of what you would like there. And we would make sure that it was on both sides, so that you were.
I think the gate there is fine. It just maybe
So are you the lady who does the stroll, or you were walking the little bit?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you.
Oh, sorry. So the Griffiths have their section, and then right next to it is a sliver of property about a foot wide that abuts theirs, that's state owned, that goes off into the woods. And I think they talk to the state to try to figure out what their issue is. And then the rest of it is, the road. So it's a real funky area.
The parking, like you look for a place to park, the access, all that public land, there's not a lot of parking.
Yeah, and so one of the things that I'm concerned about too is, if people really want to park, all of a sudden they're going to just park further down the road, right in front of the horses, and that's where they're going to end up.
Before you make that a two thing, I would get some public comments up, because they're going to disappoint a lot.
But it's dangerous.
It's dangerous
It's
there.
dangerous.
It is a dangerous corner.
Well, here's.
Park is-
Okay.
parking in.
Let's take that
That's
picture.
good.
of-
That's-
All right, that's,
Sorry.
no, this is, if it's good with the board, it's good with me, but Ms. Hollis has to take the minutes. And
Yes, good point.
We
We
need-
are going a little off.
we need to have some little bit of decorum. All right,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So where were we? Oh, so we were talking about the parking. So I guess, so the question to the board is, what do we feel like we need to do in this situation? And again, this is a cartoon that I drew, that it's not, so we have an idea that, we want to do something like this, discourage a massive amount of people parking here. And I think that it's solves a number of problems, right? It reduces the volume of folks who can park here from whatever it was, 10 cars down to 2, reduces the number of people backing in and out of this area. The other thing that I like about this is kind of having this visual aid as people come around this corner. It kind of gives them something to see and potentially slow down. Right, so we have the hiking signs. If they see a fence, maybe this can really help.
Caution, there could be some cautionary signs for leaving if they turn around there somehow.
Mhm.
But so I'll just say that, I don't know the history of this, and I don't know when the gate was put in the first place. How long has the gate been there in its current place?
Long time, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know. Yeah, I don't know, so it's always existed like that. I'm not sure what's precipitated this. Was there no one parked there before, and then all of a sudden people are going?
Yeah.
I've been there 38 or 40 years, and when I first went there, that road was a great spot for kids biking and all that, but what happened was it was a dangerous spot. We had started out with trash being put out, then it started out with animal sacrifices being slid left on the road. Then it started with guys taking their 22s and shooting bottles for target practice as my kids rode up and down the road on their bikes. Then it started with, we came home on our horses to the church one day, and my wife's slut head sticking out of the grave. And it was a guy digging up, robbing the grave.
Yeah, up on the church.
Okay.
There's a little cemetery down on the road, they parked. And they ran down, jumped in her car. She got the license plate about every one but 2 or 3. We called the state police immediately. The church in Kimballsville had just been
On missionary,
parking.
the old church.
They were at our house in 10 minutes getting all the information,
They got it.
and they arrested the people down in Fredericksburg, Maryland or something.
Oh, wait,
So that has always been a very, I've had 2 of our pets have been thrown out in bags on that road, and my God. And the final conclusion, Jeff's mom and I worked forever trying to resolve that situation. And the thing that brought it to a head was a girl got raped down by Nolan's end. So that's when the gates went up, and the gates stopped the traffic. And then slowly but surely it started to trickle into the parking lot. And then when they blacktopped my thing, it became a turnabout. Before they had it, only a couple could get in, a couple could get out. Now they loop around and do all that kind of stuff. But the big thing was how so many people enjoyed it, but there was an element that went there and just have all night booze parties, playing loud music.
Right.
So it's been a concern. But one more thing I'm gonna say is that up at the top of the hill where the farmer goes in now, go up Walker Road, that gates was always closed by Charlie, always locked it up. The last month at least, it's been open, and I'm not sure if Rob Campion, the state park guy, didn't work. Reach a deal saying just leave this gate open for people to come in, because they have 2 loads of black stone. Or look, I thought they're gonna put like a little parking lot there, and hunters are starting to park up there now. And we don't know if they're allowed to or whatever, but the gate's open 24 hours a day now. And that would be a safer visual point for cars than down at the bottom. If Rob can't get, if they're in. Along with the.
And that's the state, that's the
State
part that
park.
the state owned, the state just bought, what, couple of years ago? Right, Strawbridge.
Okay.
So I know we've heard that there's active planning going on for a lot of things in that area, like a park ranger house that they would go in. So they're gonna have to put some kind of parking in. With that, then I'm okay with like shrinking that up, to just allow an emergency vehicle to get in there.
So, yeah, and I think to Mark's point, and I think I'm thinking about, there are residents who like to park and use this little road. They've been doing it for years, and now all of a sudden we're taking that away from them. I think that we have to weigh that as well. We did close this road and create a walkable trail for a reason.
Right.
It gets used.
And it gets used quite a bit. Exactly right. So, I guess let's just bring this back, because I think we need to bring it back to a board discussion.
Maybe we can get some information from the state too, on what where their plans are.
Sure. But I think, as far as addressing this issue, do we want to go ahead and have, the office look at options as far as gates, maybe some fencing around here?
So I definitely think yes. I mean, we can decide whether we want to move the gate or not, but I think we need to do something, protect what's going on with by the culvert side and the other side where they kind
Very
of,
least.
yeah, I think it's dangerous.
Absolutely.
I'm for moving the gate, but if there's folks that have other ideas, we can bring this back to another meeting and talk about it, but it's just dangerous.
I mean, I think what we need to do, and I think the point is that this gate is too narrow. It's too narrow for the road here. And if we bring it up, we need to bring something else. So I think my proposal would be that I think the board's in agreement to do something, right? And so maybe we can have folks look at options around sort of the concept that we presented here. And then once we have sort of gate options and fencing or guardrail options, we can come back and talk about, where we want to go with the plan.
What is that sign there then? Is it no?
This is a no parking sign. Oh, there's no trucks.
No trucks.
So this is a artifact of when the road was open. Yeah. So there's also a stop sign here that is an artifact of when the road was open.
Right.
So all of these probably could get taken out. And again, yeah. So the concept is, and again, you can see where the road kind of starts here. Is
Yes.
the fence starts around here and goes right across, and there's a bank there. So,
Right.
Yeah. All right. All right. So I think Stacy, you have sort of the conclusion. By the way, you don't have to write verbatim. Just there was a discussion pro and con, and the board has decided.
Summarize.
So we will look at options, and we'll work with the staff to figure out, okay, what are some of the actual physical items that we can use in this situation. So, okay. Thank you. Appreciate the conversation.
Yes. Thanks.
All right, so the next is our zoning hearing board vacancy. And I have all these papers here, but we have a vacancy on the zoning hearing board. I think the question, I'm not sure what the question is that we need to answer here, other than announce that we have this vacancy and we're looking for someone to fill it.
Right.
This is the alternate position. So while it is not necessary for the zoning hearing board to function, it's a good position to have filled in case the zoning board doesn't have enough members or quorum to fulfill their duties. So really just want to kind of advertise that we have that vacancy. So if you're interested in joining the zoning board.
And this could
Please.
be anyone in the township.
Yeah, there is no requirement. You don't have to be an expert in anything really. It helps, I'm sure, but it's any resident can join the zoning hearing board.
There are some incompatible offices with a ZHB member. Off the top of my head, I couldn't list them all, but whoever does submit an application needs to understand that if they hold another township office, they would not be permitted to hold both.
So they would have to, so like if they're on the planning commission, for example, they can also be on the zoning hearing board. Okay. So for the 3 folks in the audience who are interested, you can apply because there's no one online. So if you've got some free time and want to be on the zoning hearing board. So
It's an important position.
it is.
Since it's just us, do you have do you have a resolution as to the number of board members you prefer? How many alternates?
We do, and I think we have 2 alternates and 5 members of the
I was
board.
gonna say, are
5?
one of these alternates not
So,
on there anymore?
Yes, I believe that.
Jack or
is-
Nancy?
I don't remember who's off of it.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll have
One
to.
of the alternates is off.
Yeah. Okay. And all right. So with that, I think we can move to public comments. The public comment can include comments on anything attendees might want to share. Commenters must share their name and whether they are a township resident or a taxpayer in the township. All right.
Republican debate.
My name's John Auerbach. I'm a Franklin Township resident for 45 years. So I wasn't going to make any comments, but there's so much red meat out there. There are a couple of things that are really important that related to this Lexington Point thing. I think there are 2 things the township needs to do pretty quickly. You need to do some interviews and find a contractor that's going to manage the administrative part of collecting the money. That's tough business, managing the delinquency and all that. Your ordinance has to have the rules, but the nuts and bolts of collecting it really shouldn't fall on the staff here. That's a tough job to do. So that's one. The second contract is also important, is contractor to run the place, to operate it on a day-to-day basis. It requires great skill and experience to run a little plant like this and keep it on spec. So you got to, Stan should be able to help you with that. Find some suitable contractors, do some interviews, start figuring out who does what out there. That's the one really important thing about this particular plant that's really important to you is that before you get it, this performance of that thing has to be certified to the quality requirements and specifications of the effluent. If you miss the effluent quality, you can be fined. There's all kinds of draconian things that can happen to you. So, and it's a tough plant to run. I can tell you that London Britain Township has one in Windsor Court, and they inherited it because the builder went bankrupt, and they had to complete the project themselves and start the plant. Not themselves, they had hired people, but they had a really difficult time getting that plant to perform on spec. So it's a really important item. And the other thing, the administrative costs need to be added into the fee. Because that was one comment I had met when I was still on the board, is that there's administrative costs. They're going to come from the township, hopefully not, but from some contractor. That needs to be built into the monthly fee. And you don't want the township staff to have to deal with delinquencies and all that real tough stuff. There are people that are professional that really know how to do it. And yes, you need some tough people to do that. So, yeah, and the rate, just to give you a point of comparison, because I remember talking to London Britain Township about it. Aleen's the board chair down there. And those people pay $3,000 a year, $257 a month. And that was quite a few years ago. So, yeah. Yeah. But I think the number that you got, the last number I saw we got from Fred, I think was his last name, the guy that runs the engineering for Ebert, was somewhere around $1,500 a year, which I thought was kind of low. The one thing, yours should be lower than the one down in London, Britain, because they only have like 16 houses and you got 38 houses. So you're getting the fixed costs spread out over on more houses. So I guess that's pretty much the only other thing. When Stefan was talking about money and this whole thing with the selling the land versus taking the contract, is that somebody can do some future value on money calcs. It's a fundamental engineering and training function. So to figure out what the money was worth in a future value. And the only thing I always worried about is that they could break the contract. I don't know whether that, if things get really tough on them, they might be able to break the contract. The White Clay Preserve, oh, that's an interesting one. The only one I'd say for that is that the board members that have not been up there, you ought to get a guided tour of that place to know what it's about before anybody decides to start using it, because it's a treat. There are two private properties and the township property. So you have three properties on the same driveway. The two property owners, they're not real happy with this anyway. And they're not happy about people using it. But the driveway, it's a steep driveway. You need a really robust four-wheel drive vehicle to go up there, and it's got to be dry. Because we had Hawking have to.
It's not really.
Yeah.
We're on record, so.
Yeah,
it's not a desirable, accessible place.
So again, I think there's a bigger story with what he's trying to present. It's not parked there in my mind.
Yeah.
It's he has a little bit of a different concept than that. So he understands that it's a pretty long.
The only thing the point I was trying to make though is that I just would like to know, because I find, it's on the record, I just sometimes find that what the pro comes up with and does is a line crosser relative to what their power is, and they'll do something and ask permission later. And I would like to know what the long-term plan is with some of these preserves. If they are the managing entity of the preserves, are they all going to be the same exact thing from one preserve to another, where you take your bike, or take your horse, or take your dog? I mean,
they're not the managing. They're not the managing. They're not the managing.
They think they are.
We are.
Yeah, I know that, but
Right,
they think
but they and I think they need to provide their ideas, and then we need to.
I will say that Matt sat here with me and Dave one day and promised that they wouldn't do anything until they presented it to us.
Yeah, no, and Matt is not doing that. That wasn't his intention. Right.
The only,
No, I know. I'm just saying what's.
But Stefan, we can, and I think we have asked for this, or we should have a conversation on what the strategy, what is the trail strategy? We should, there should be a
No
presentation.
way out of that, please.
Yeah, but it should be, this is a bigger conversation.
yeah.
Yeah. We'll have to talk.
Yeah.
This was, so.
That's the comment I was getting ready to make, is that there really isn't, once you're in there, there's really no way out of it. I was looking at the topography, but the topography I only have is the Franklin part of it. I couldn't see what the adjoining topography was on the property line, so it may be very limited. So you may want to look at that. And work. I guess the pro, as long as you have that group working, they're going to keep coming up with stuff. So it's up to you to manage it. All right, thank you.
I make a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting at 8:59 PM.
Second. Oh, I was gonna get.
All right, thank you, Stefan. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Good.